Welcome back to part 2 of body defense mechanisms. We finished off in part 1 talking about what inflammation is. The increased blood flow, the dilation of arterioles, leaky capillaries, allowing more fluid and more white blood cells into tissue. And that's going to help in 2 ways. First, white blood cells, they come in, they eat things, they break down. Immediate immune response. The other thing, that increased fluid into the area is going to increase the amount of lymph we make. So that excess fluid is going to go into our lymphatic capillaries, and there we're going to have it go through our lymph nodes, which is going to help filter everything out as well as activate that third line of defense, the adaptive. So there are 4 cardinal signs of inflammation: redness, heat, swelling, and pain. And they make sense because you're having more blood flow to the area. So redness, more blood flow there. More red blood cells, looks redder. Heat, blood is slightly warmer than average body temperature, so it's warmer. That heat is going to increase how quickly we repair. And then swelling, more fluid there. And then pain. Some of that pain can be from the swelling. Some could be from bacterial toxins, for example. Sometimes you'll see a 5th sign, disuse, so that might help you repair too. If your ankle hurts, you walk on it less, it gets better. Right? Cool. So inflammation, let's add that to our ongoing list. So we have 2 types of cells in our second line, we have 2 types of proteins, and then we are going to have, what's this called? 2 body responses. So first, inflammation, and the other is fever. So an elevated body temperature. There's a couple ideas here. The first is that when you get warmer, you increase your metabolism, you increase your rate of repair. And so you'd think that would help bacteria, but it doesn't really, because our liver is going to hold on to zinc. It's going to hold on to things that the bacteria need. Causes nutrients to be withheld from bacteria. So a lot of people would say, oh, you get a fever so that you kill bacteria. You're not going to kill a lot there at all. It's more about increasing our rate of repair and withholding those nutrients. And so this is showing how when we have an invasion, our white blood cells are going to release pyrogens. And so pyrogens are going to go to the hypothalamus that helps regulate our body temperature and set it warmer. So then, if you're at regular body temperature, your hypothalamus thinks you're too cold. So that's why you often feel cold when you have a fever. It's pretty neat. So let's add that to our list. And how pretty is that? Second line of defense, 2 cells, 2 proteins, 2 body responses. Okay. So now here's review questions that I would recommend you pause the video and take some time to answer. Okay, I'm going to assume you either pause it now or you're not going to. So let's go through the answers. So 1, identify 2 ways the skin and mucous membranes are part of the immune system. So they're that first line of defense. They're a physical barrier, and they have chemical secretions that are antimicrobials. And then match the components to the second line description. So fever increases our metabolism and slows bacterial growth. Inflammation increases blood flow to an area. Phagocytes are not listed there. Ooh. They engulf foreign materials. They're cells like macrophages and neutrophils. Natural killer cells. Those attack our own cancerous or infected cells. D. Complement proteins. They can form those membrane attack complexes They can bind to foreign cells to make it easier for phagocytes to find them. It can also increase inflammation. And then interferons are released by infected cells to warn others. So, these phagocytes are the eaters. Here we go. So that is the answer. Okay. So we've gone through our first and second line of defense. Now let's go through our adaptive or specific immune system. It's great because not only does it recognize foreign things and make a whole army that fights them, but we're also going to have memory. So once you've encountered something once, these cells are going to be remembering it and get activated faster than next time. So there are two branches to the immune system, humoral response and cellular. So let's go to add that to our list. Let's look at this first. So first, that innate response works against anything. These cells are already here, ready to go. It takes hours to start an innate response, whereas adaptive, they've got to be shown those antigens, the foreign materials, before they get started. So it'll take a couple days. Okay. So our adaptive, we've got, don't want to do that. Cellular or cell-mediated, and humoral or antibody-mediated. These are going to be different lymphocytes that help with each. I'll add those in. Okay, so let's go on. So let's talk about how they distinguish self from non-self and what they do. So important points here. First, our own cells have MHC markers, major histocompatibility complexes. So those mark us as self. So it allows our white blood cells to say, hey, this is me, don't attack. Fun fact there, they did studies and had people smell other people's t-shirts of the opposite sex, and they looked at how attracted to them they were. And what they found was there was a middle range where people were the most attracted. So they weren't attracted to people with similar MHC markers or too dissimilar. And that makes a lot of sense, because if someone's MHC markers are too similar, they're probably closely related. Inbreeding is not good. Genetic mutations add up, right? And if someone is too far away, you might not be as genetically compatible as well. Pretty fun. Okay. And so things that are foreign markers are antigens, antibody generators. Our immune system responds to them. So those will be, like on a bacteria, it could be a sugar, lipid, some sort of thing they have on their plasma membrane, right? Great. Okay. So let's look at humoral immunity or antibody mediated. So humoral immunity is done by our B cells. B cells because they get trained in the bone marrow. And so these B cells are made in the red bone marrow, they're trained in there, and then they go out and they sit in our lymphatic tissues and in our blood, and they wait. And they might not ever be activated. But if we come in contact to what they work against, they go through what's called clonal selection, and they divide rapidly. And they make this whole army. So the effector cells are those active warriors in the immune response. When they get activated, they're called plasma cells, and they make antibodies. And so those antibodies are going to go and find those foreign molecules that those B cells work for. And we'll look at what those look like on a couple slides down from now. The other cells that get made when we have an immune response is memory cells. So those memory cells are not activated in this immune response. They're going to wait for next time. And so if you encounter that same pathogen again, that same foreign material, those memory cells are going to get activated faster and stronger. So let's add into our list. Humoral is done by B cells. Great. And then let's look at that cellular or cell-mediated immunity. These are our T cells. They're called T cells because they train in the thymus. And there are a couple different types of T cells that have different jobs. It's based on what proteins are on the outside, like CD4 or CD8. And then this was a cute picture that someone made. There's our T cell, and then a Mr. T cell. Pities the fool who expresses a non-self antigen. I think that's fun. Okay, so the first type of T cells you have are helper T cells. These are the ones that coordinate our immune response. They're going to help a lot with activating more of the innate immune system too. These are the cells that are affected by HIV. Another type of warrior effector cells you have are cytotoxic T cells. These are a lot like the natural killer cells. They attack our own infected, messed up cells. So they're going to be going through attacking. They can also attack cancer cells. You should watch these cytotoxic T cells. This video, I don't want to leave it too long because I'm worried about copyright issues, but watch this. I went to undergrad with this guy who made it. It's really cool. It shows them attacking cancer cells. It shows them releasing their proteins in. And so each type of effector, we also have memory cells that are going to be there for next time again. They wait for next time. So now let's add back onto our list the last component. Cellular, cell-mediated T cells. Okay. So now we've gone through each of these divisions. Our immune system has two parts, the innate, the nonspecific, and the adaptive, the specific. Nonspecific, we've got our first line of defense with those barriers. Second line, we've got our internal defenses that are nonspecific. And third line, we've got those T cells and B cells that only work against one specific antigen each, and they need to get activated before they help out with the immune response. Okay. So let's look a little bit more at those antibodies made by the B cells. So here are the antibodies. They're these Y-shaped proteins that have two binding sites. Right there. So those binding sites are going to be attaching to the antigens. So that's what they work against. So they're going to go on there and mark that antigen. They can do a couple things when they do that. First, when they mark it, phagocytes can come in and eat way easier. The other thing they can do is they can temporarily inactivate those cells. Pretty cool. Okay. So now let's look at the difference between seeing an antigen the first time versus the second. So a primary immune response is your first encounter with a particular antigen. So if you get a specific cold virus or a specific like strep throat, right? Then a secondary immune response comes after that. Any other time you see it, you've got memory cells. And we'll pick this up in part 3.